I'm clapping to start the show. I don't know why. It is TexAgs Rewind. It is brought to you by T-Mobile. Thank you so much to T-Mobile. Great service, by the way. Visit T-Mobile.com/acrossamerica to learn how you can get more value and more coverage through T-Mobile. On the show today, a lot of college football to get into. Why is my hands moving so much? I don't know. But we had Chuck Oliver, king of college football, on the show. He talked about A&M. Maybe they're a year away, but it's going to depend on quarterback play. We've all been saying that for a while. Billy Liucci was on. We went through recruiting, the situation right now. We went through conference expansion. We went through the numbers that A&M could put out there. So we did a lot of stuff with Billy Liucci. By the way, he's the executive editor, co-owner of TexAgs. We also had the top 12 moments that I've been going through here on the show. Today was number 7, and number 7 was Aggie NIT run, the basketball NIT run. Awesome run right there. We went through that, so that was fun to do. And beyond that, we also did a little things that are going to happen in college football. I had 5 things that I think are going to happen. Not necessarily Aggie-related, but just big picture things happening in college football. The Aggies are woven into that story without a doubt. And I'd like to hear from you. What are some 5 things that are going to happen? Comment below. It's TexAgs Rewind. Great. And so, Obi, you were there at that press conference, and you're thinking to yourself, this is national news going on right now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I was there in Tampa when they didn't get selected after beating Florida, Auburn, and Arkansas, and they still didn't get selected. So, and I wanted to ask, as everybody did, Buzz for his opinion then. Buzz didn't want to talk, and it's not that you have to understand, as I've come to know Buzz, he's a very analytical guy, and he doesn't want to make uneducated comments. So he didn't speak on it. He went back and he did his own, compiled his own data on this, and came to the conclusion, rightly so, that they got robbed. And they did. And so he spoke out about it. Now, there goes, he's whining. Well, that's like the same people say he was whining, or the same people say if someone came in and stole your TV out of your house and you reported it to the police, you'd be whining.
Right.
You know, why is the guy that's victimized and speaks out about the poor job that the committee did, the bad guy? So I thought that was great. And we've seen a lot of these things like this with Texas A&M now. It's a program with good coaches that don't mind speaking their minds. They just do it differently. Jimbo Fisher, he gets upset and he's just going to say what he has to say.
Right.
Buzz is more the type to say, okay,
analyze.
I'm a lawyer. I want to build my case. And I've said it before. He had a great case. When the Mountain West gets 4 teams in and they all get eliminated, and there are other mid-major conferences that got more in, and then you look and see that the committee members, the chairman, the commissioner, or the chairman was from the Southland Conference. You had a guy from Bradley, a guy from Toledo, had a woman from the Atlantic 10 Conference, the SWAC, the Sun Belt Conference, and Butler. So you had 7 members representing mid-major conferences. Oh my. What do you know? All these mid-majors got in, and a team like A&M that made this incredible run, and then they said, well, you have to look at the totality of the whole season. They lost 6 games in a row.
Right.
Well, but you're a-hole, you're not looking at the totality of the season if you point out those 6 games that they lost. See, they didn't go. Well, if you look at the way they started, they did really well. If you look after they lost those 6 games, how they rebounded, they did really well. If you look at then what they did in the postseason tournament, they did really well. So look at the totality. But there were, like Buzz pointed out, there was no logical explanation.
I kind of want to go through some things that I believe are going to happen in college football here in 2022. Now, I will say this. Some of them, these aren't necessarily A&M specific, but A&M is weaved into the discussion. And the first one is an easy one to see happening, but I'll explain my thinking. The first one is I believe Arkansas is going to be undefeated when they head to Jerry's World to take on Texas A&M. They're going to be 3-0, which a lot of people are like, of course they're going to be 3-0, but they have an interesting start to their season. They've got games against Cincinnati to open up. I don't think Cincinnati is going to be as good as they've been in years past for obvious reason. A lot of people still think they're going to be salty. I don't think you lose part of your defense, your stellar defense, and your starting quarterback, and people can expect them to be the same caliber of team that they were last year. So I'm going Cincinnati is going to lose to Arkansas. And by the way, if I have it correct, I believe Arkansas is hosting them. You know how hard it is to play there at Fayetteville. So they're going to beat Cincy to open up the season. Then they have a SEC game right out the gate, and that's against South Carolina. And it's going to take some time for South Carolina to get going. I think they're going to be much better this year. How can they not? And they were better at the end of last year. But Arkansas is going to beat them. And then you have Missouri State. Let's not forget that there's a lot of hype train around Arkansas. They get transfers. Sam Pittman, he's the greatest thing ever, and yada, yada, yada. While I have respect for what they're doing there, and I think Sam Pittman's a good coach, this is just a smokescreen for what's going to happen after that. And they're going to get Texas A&M, and they're going to have some early tests. There's no doubt about that. A&M will have the Miami test, the Sam Houston test, Appalachian State test. But this will be the first real test for both of them. And A&M is a far superior team. I say it here. So, yeah, I think Arkansas will be undefeated heading into Jerry's World, and then they will leave with a loss. So I think that is one thing that is going to happen in college football. The other thing is, I think the University of Houston might be a New Year's Six Bowl team, and there's a reason for that. I'm not saying that Houston is like SEC good or anything. Please don't mistake what I'm saying. But they have a really good offense and a very manageable schedule, and they've got experience. And kind of going through their schedule, they don't have Central Florida or Cincinnati at all. Those are usually their two hardest games. All right, they do have an interesting start. They've got UTSA, which I think is real good, and that's going to be a test, and Texas Tech, which they lost last year. Let's say that, and then they got Kansas and Rice after that. So let's say they go 3-1. Maybe they lose to Texas Tech. Even if they go 2-2, you've got Tulane and Memphis after that, and you've got that American athletic schedule. That is a 10-win team, an 11-win team based on the kind of teams that they're going to be playing next year. I think Houston could be going to a New Year's Six Bowl. Clayton Tune has played a lot of football, all right? He's returning. Got a lot of other starters out there. Just want to get your thoughts on how you think things are going to shake out here over the next 12 months because if you look at last year as an indicator, you got the Texas OU move, then everybody else reacts. Big 12 adds their teams, then it gets quiet again. We just had USC and UCLA go to the Big Ten. SEC saying they're going to stand pat for now. How do you think things are going to shake out?
I'm not trying to make any sort of commentary on conference commissioners' integrity. There are times you just got to say what you say, And the truth is, it's not my business, for instance, when I ask and you're in the middle of negotiations. And so I'm going to put a filter. I'm not going to say dismiss. I'm going to put a filter on a lot of what I hear. Understand Greg Sankey, and this is public commentary where you get held to it. Understand behind closed doors, Greg Sankey was sitting elbow to elbow with Bob Bowlesby for a year and a half planning playoff expansion while he was picking his pocket of his two best teams. Kevin Warren and Larry Scott, actually, I guess Kliavkoff, shook hands and said, we're united against that kind of activity, for real. And Kevin Warren's like, yo, USC, you got a business card? And by the way, I think it's even more sinister than that. I think they get USC, that's a heritage program, and you say we get the LA market, whatever that is worth. UCLA, yes, it brings basketball, and it should bring good football. I think the Big Ten took UCLA simply so they wouldn't be available for another conference to poach. That's sinister stuff. That's like Bear Bryant back in the day taking the sixth, string quarterback that would have been a starter at Mississippi State when you had unlimited scholarships. Is that kind of thing. So I'm going to filter out almost everything I hear from a conference commissioner.
So you think there will be some moves, though, over the next year?
Oh, absolutely. I've said it's Game of Thrones sort of stuff, man. Think 20 or 24. In fact, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I talked about a concept called SEC 2, where you have the real SEC, and it's 12 or 14 programs. And then you have another 12 or 14 that are fighting to get up in a rolling 2-year way. And it's the same thing as relegation over in Europe. Something like that's coming, brother. I promise you. I think we're going to have 3 actual conferences, the Big Ten, which will have their 20 or so teams, the SEC will have their 20 or so teams, and then you'll have remnants of probably either the Big 12, what's left, and the Pac-12, what's left, or the Big 12 and what's left of the ACC. There will be a third conference that comes from the leftovers of the Big 12 and one of the others. I think that's going to be the three conferences that play actual college football, and Rice and UNLV and Eastern Michigan can play for something else.
Is there anything new we can provide with Novosad?
No, Notre Dame offered him yesterday. I think he was very close to ending up at Ohio State. He's still committed to Baylor. They're a very big factor here. You guys, you see Dave Aranda and the job he's done there, and people believe in it. And they really are desperately trying to hang on to him in that commitment for obvious reasons. A&M and Jimbo and Daryl Dickey, I think it's been a very busy couple weeks of recruiting there. And I think they run into a lot of times. I think this is starting to look like a very similar recruitment to Haynes King, minus the fact that there's an added obstacle here because he's committed already to Baylor and has been for a while. But kind of the same timeline for King. And it's where Jimbo is really needing to form the personal relationship here, which he did with Haynes, to beat out Tennessee. It's just a lot of times with these in-state kids, it happens to where the in-state schools, and particularly the ones that recruit nationally, you have to to get guys like Dante Moore and Jaden Rashada, who A&M backed way off of long before his OV, and I kept trying to insinuate that, but people weren't really catching on there. A couple of notable whiners on the board saying that guy was a must-get, and not realizing the price tag that was allegedly attached there made a big difference. But to get those guys to even visit, you have to offer them very early in the process. And it's very hard to get quarterbacks from California and Michigan to come and take OVs. And so those are always going to be kind of your first round of offers to get their attention and get them in. Schools across the country do that. That's exactly what schools across the country do with Texas kids, particularly QBs. And a lot of schools offered Connor Wigman before A&M did, and a lot of schools offered Cade Klubnik before A&M did. And Cade seemed a little more offended by it. And of course, he's got some A&M family ties as well. Connor did not. And as soon as he got that offer, A&M shot to the top of his list, and in pretty short order, he was a committed guy. So it kind of depends on the prospect and stuff. And I think the deal is to say, like, look, they wanted to evaluate and get to know him in a certain kind of way, because you're not going to just throw an offer out there to a Texas kid, and you can usually get them on campus or to camp or whichever prior to offering, which you're just not going to do with these out-of-state national top 10 QBs. So that was the initial push, was to get guys on campus and evaluate now.
So those of you who watch this religiously know that yesterday when we did this, Sam Kamen on purpose said, you're not going to have an outro. You're not going to have one. I'm not going to allow it. So moving forward, we're taking a vote. Does the outro even matter? If it does matter, comment below. If it doesn't matter, comment below. And what I'm realizing is by me asking you that question, you're watching the end of this, which will tell me something or nothing at all. It doesn't really matter. Not everybody comments, but it would help if you did. It's TexAgs Rewind.